Yoko Ono sits on a stage as the audience members take scissors and slowly cut pieces off her clothes until she is bare. They change from voyeuristics to victimizers as they participate in undressing her, as she remains impassive. It is chilling. Though Ono herself never claimed for it to be a feminist work or one devoting violence against women, the imagery is hard to ignore. Cut Piece was first performed in 1964 and was re-performed most notably 40 years later in 2003. I find the contrast between these images striking. There are differences, one set in black and white and one in color. One, she's 31 and one, she is 70. One, she's more moneyed, and the other, she looks more commonplace. The first, she is on the floor, in the end clutching her clothes to herself. And the second, she sits straight, backed, seated the entire time. I wonder how much age colors the way that we interpret her, how someone at 70 feels less exposed in nudity, but her nakedness seems more odd. We are used to eroticizing and sheltering women's bodies, and we're trained to recoil at the idea of an elderly person engaging in sexual desire. How much of a work belongs to an artist, and how much of it is each viewer's? Cut Piece found its origin in the Fluxus movement, where the idea that art and life were not separate endeavors, but they were indivisible from life and from each other. So Ono's intentions and interpretations of world peace and the give and take of art and of shared identity can also coexist with the personification of sexual violence, eroticism, and the scrutinization of women. What are your thoughts? As you look at these images, as you hear my reflections, what are your thoughts on this piece? Are you familiar with it? Was this the first time? What are your thoughts on the art? What are your thoughts on the artist? What is a book or film or song or painting that you interpret different than the creator? That's my switch from artist voice to the fact that I'm normally a little bit more high key when I talk. So last August, it was a dark and lonely night in the early of August of 2020, and I had spent the last few months becoming engaged with art after a generation of being like, girl, I don't understand it. I cannot do art, and I never had time for it because of that. One time when playing Pictionary, I was trying to draw Australia, and they didn't even get the fact that it was a country. And the thing said map of the world. And I cannot draw a stitch figure, and I cannot draw a straight line, and I am just not generally good at what they called art. So I never really engaged in it. I engaged in the written art, I engaged in things, and even things like poetry or things that were like slightly more not concrete, I didn't like. And the older I've gotten, the more I have opened myself up to having different interpretations and understanding that I don't have to have traditional art. And one of the big things is that in early 2020, when the pandemic was roaring, I discovered the art assignment by Sarah Yerscreen. I've been a huge fan of John Green and his work with education for a long time, and as her book was coming out, I started watching their live shows, and then I got sucked into the beautiful masterpiece that is the art assignment. It is 7 years of art and of lessons and of really looking at how art does not have to be defined by talent, quote unquote. It doesn't have to fit into this preformed idea of what art is or what art isn't. And through this, I discovered Yoko Ono, and I started reading her work, and I discovered Frida Kahlo, as many of you know I love now. And I found a lot of solace. I cannot do what they did, but that doesn't mean that I can't enjoy it and that I can't become an interpreter of their work. So then as we went through the spring and summer and I became more and more involved, I decided to start an Instagram page where I kind of talk about art and I talk about my reflections on art, and I ask people to share their thoughts back. And I thought about doing a video on it, but it's very different than my normal material, and it also just is something that I don't feel like qualified still. But I really liked this one. I thought it was a very visionary one and one that could be very easy to engage with. So if you've stuck around, if you care about this, I would love to hear something that you interpret different than something else. It doesn't have to be, it can be something that's considered real art, like Yoko Ono, or like a painting from the 15th century, or a music video, or something like that. A big one that came to mind when I asked this question was Last Kiss by Taylor Swift. I'm a huge Swiftie, my family has been into it the whole life, and this song came to me probably when I was like 10 or 11, and I have used it through every hard situation ever. The first time I used it was when I lost a friend, and I had never had romantic feelings or anything like that, and I never had a kiss and didn't for years after. But through this, I've always viewed it as a song about ending, about how not being able to get closure, not being able to get an end feeling. And yes, I've used it during breakups, yes, I've used it during other times, but it's one of those songs that I keep on coming back to whenever I feel a sense of lack of closure, even though it's specifically about a romantic situation. Most of the time I haven't used about it in a romantic situation, and that is an easy interpretation of a song. I normally post about books, so if you have an interpretation on a book or on a story, on a poem, on a character that is different than the person might have said, then I would love to hear that as well. I think that headcanon or all of those things are completely valid, and especially in art, especially in all of these things, we integrate with each other's and we tell each other stories, and I would love to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. And yeah, let me know if you're interested in this. I love interpreting art and I love researching art, and I've had so much fun posting on Instagram and being a little bit negligent in it lately, and I would love to get back into it and create it, and I would love to have responses and stuff, because I feel like part of that and the communication of it is such an important part for me enjoying aspects of stories and of art. So I hope you have a fantastic day. Look at some art, and if you're a Fluxus person, then kind of learn how to interpretate art into your life. What is a way today in the mundanity of your life that you can see art? Do it the Fluxus way. Also, I forgot that my July post in this year, the artist actually responded to it and was like, that's not how I interpret my piece at all, but I love it. So he said, thank you for your commentary on my piece. I love that the art is like looking through a window where the view may point to a variety of landscapes. I think that he was just writing a piece. Well, I was like, surrealism can sometimes show what realism can never express. I cannot stop staring at this piece and all that it entails, the Hellenistic style and the commentary on beauty standards, with the green that makes it seem timeless while rotting, the eyes that are much too expressive for a statue, when the shoulders look almost human. The perfect form of a woman may change, but the shame remains, repackaged in a different label. And he was probably like, dude, this is just a statue with like real surrealism aspects. But man, I love his art and it's really cool. And he responded to me and I was like, this is so cool. So that's another time when I interpreted an artist differently, but he was like, no, it's cool, dude.